That's him.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, see, he's like, oh, let me
he's
go.
cute.
Hi everyone, my name is Divar Masluther and this is our third video. Today we have James Shepard Jr. He's an instructor at Guardian Martial Arts Studio and he's also a photographer in Candid Photography. Say hi, James.
Hello, everyone.
Today we're gonna interview him on two things. He does martial art and another form of art. So he does two form of arts, different style. Do you want to introduce yourself, James? Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is James Shepard Jr. We get a huge honor for me to be here and be able to do this. Two businesses that I run are Guardian Martial Arts Studio, which is a martial arts school that teaches Taekwondo, Hapkido, and then SIRE/Sport and Defense Systems. So we have two Korean arts and then kind of Filipino arts there. We're based in the basement of the Valley Mission Church. We're on the lower level of that. And so, when our business was first started, I'm actually the second owner. The original owner was Gary Johnson. He's a former county sheriff, retired, who actually started it as something he felt was his calling to provide a positive, like Christian atmosphere for kids and be able to be a positive influence, kind of role model wise, and still be able to teach quality martial arts. I linked up with him back in 2015 when he actually came to judge my Hapkido first on black belt test. I actually started teaching there in 2016, just kind of showed up on a whim one day to check out, the school that he was running. One thing led to another, started teaching there in 2016, and then I took over the Hapkido program in, I think, 2017, 2018 was when I became the senior instructor of that. 2017 was also when I started teaching the Filipino arts there. 2019 was when I took over the business. Master Gary Johnson retired, decided it was a good time for him to retire from running the business and passed the business on to me, and we've still been going strong. We have, lots of students that we're very proud of and that we provide. I think we have a great atmosphere and, lots of good quality instructors. And then on the other end, I also run Creative Flow Photography. That's my own personal photography business. I do individual, family, couple shoots, engagement. My day job is counselor. I actually work as a behavior clinician for Milestone, which is the clinical arm of Stone Belt. So I do therapeutic work with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. All the things that I'm involved with are just kind of involved around how can I be a good helper with other individuals.
Which is very important right now because a lot of people need that mental health to be nurtured.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that society as a whole is getting more informed about, just all the needs of mental health and just how that looks. And I think especially in the disability community, that's huge as far as getting a better understanding of just what life is like and just how people are affected, just disability wise. I know with the quarantine and everything with, COVID really hit that community hard because, that's changes in jobs, job availability for some people. That's ability to go outside. If somebody who's like, maybe in one of our supported living homes, maybe can't go out to businesses or can't go and do some of the activities they used to do. And I primarily work pediatric. And so you have a lot of kids who are missing, seeing friends or adjusting with all the developments with schools. And so right now definitely is a big time to take care of, your mental health and be able to really kind of use a church word here, but just kind of be filled up, kind of recharged in a way.
Yeah, I agree because I used to train Jiu Jitsu. Right now, that's not really possible. And does that affect your studio as well?
Yeah, it has affected us as far as just how we run. What we've been doing is, we've been making it where we have a couple of families. All of them actually are students of the school, and a couple are two of the kids and one of the father or black belts or instructors. We'll have individual families maybe work together for partner work. When the lockdown first started, I actually was able to, fortunately, was in a position where I could purchase more kind of freestanding bags or heavy bags, and just kind of it really forced us to get creative with how we do things because we didn't want to have any extra, contact. We knew people were going to be working out and sweating and maybe breathing harder around each other. So, how could we establish class in a way where we could be, socially distanced and just also, kind of pairing people together if they're related and you're kind of living in the same house, makes it where they can work together. and kind of have, give each person their own spot in the room. We have a little over 800 square feet, and comfortably, I actually went and crunched the numbers and did the math, and we can have about 8 to 10 people, in a class and be distanced okay if we really use the full space.
Yeah, like socially distancing class basically.
Yeah, just kind of making sure it's distanced, and we wipe down the bags in between classes, and kind of deep clean between classes, because there's about 15 to 20 minutes between each class. We'll do 2 to 3 classes, depending on the night of the week. And so, wiping down the equipment, and just kind of making sure people who are in the gallery are wearing masks, or parents waiting for their kid, they can decide to wait inside and watch, or some will just hang out in their cars because they're like, I don't want to increase the risk of exposure. So we've had people who, luckily people have been very cooperative and very understanding of just some of the precautions that are taking place. And then we have some students that we dearly miss who are still staying home because they're either have a loved one or a close family member that they don't want to jeopardize getting infected. And so we have some that we haven't had come back yet. It's been kind of heartbreaking just not seeing people, because on one end we have the people that we are seeing, but on the other side, you're thinking about the people who aren't there too, and just how to help them out. When we did the lockdown, 3 nights a week over Facebook Live, doing video classes when we weren't able to do any in-person classes, and then would occasionally do like some Zoom seminars. And that was actually a very, very interesting moment, because it was one where we kind of figure out how can we still provide not only the training and the ability to learn, but also how can we maintain that personal connection, because it's not only the training, but it's also the camaraderie that you get from working with people. There's people there that are friends, and people that we consider close like family. So that was a very kind of big moment, trying to help with that, and then again being able to provide the training, but also making sure we're taking the precautions that we can.
Because you're not in person to guide them, you have to do it through the video. Is that difficult for you to do?
I will say that when you're teaching by video, I mean, anything done solo and done on video in an instructional capacity, you're bringing 2 to 3 times the energy of your audience, no matter what, just because you are providing you're the show in that point. And so there's planning and kind of thought that goes into it. There's reacting to people are making comments on the live chat. If there's something they have questions over, and so being able to make sure you're able to meet all those needs. Also, considering where are people at when they're doing this, where they're not in a training space, they might be in their living room, they might be in a basement, they might be outside. When you're used to going to several classes a week, and then all of a sudden you're going to none, I mean, that's hours a week that you're not moving.
Yeah.
And so doing some things to help them stay moving, keep up a certain level of flexibility, and then also reviewing technical things technique wise and form wise to make sure that those things stay fresh in the mind. So I have a student who we've met over Zoom, and it's a 2-hour class, and so thinking about how to do distance training with what he has available in his garage is big. Reaching out to people who are not maybe able to come in, and making sure they have things to keep themselves busy. And everybody working through this right now is trying to grow in, and that's something I definitely see kind of coming up for the future.
Yeah, so you want to make sure it's like fair for everyone that can't be in person, that can be in person. Like you just want to make sure everyone gets all the benefits they can get.
Yeah, because luckily, with the nice thing about doing it over Facebook Live is all those classes were recorded and are accessible on the site, so people can go back and look at those classes if they want to.
You don't want people to forget the moves or the techniques and all those things. But what do you think of, like, let's say, taking a break for a while and then returning to practicing and all those stuff? Is that important also for mental health? Because we were talking about mental health as well. Will that help them kind of sharpen it just because they take a break and then they will return to it? Is there a difference in their techniques or something like that?
Once you make those neural connections to learn and internalize something, it's not so much that you forget things, but the strength of those neural networks is based on how much is that network activated and repeated. And so there's something to be said for repetition, either high level repetition to increase the strength of that neural network to kind of recall those moves, or also a strong emotional connection to it that will also help recall. But it's one where sort of like riding a bike. You don't really forget how to ride a bike. You might not be as good as if you say you were practicing it every day, and then maybe you don't ride one for years. So it's like, okay, I gotta remember a little bit how to balance. But once I get going, you're like, okay, I've got it.
Yeah, kind of like also like driving a car, basically.
Yeah, like driving a car. So I say it's the same way where when it comes to like maybe forums or something like that, you might remember generally what it looks like, but there might be little specifics and little minor details that might be tougher to recall, but just with practice and guidance, it comes back.
I really miss doing jujitsu. I really want to do it again. And I know the school that I went to, they're open. I also don't feel safe yet to go to class. There are some people that, they don't care and they would just go. But I also have that guilt of not practicing and training. Yeah, so I feel like, oh, I'm missing out. Sometimes I would just like watch videos of the techniques that I used to learn. My husband also trains. He's a blue belt. I'm still a white belt. So that kind of affects it.
It's a really tough spot to be in because I don't want anyone who's not there to feel guilty about not being there.
Yeah.
Everybody has their reasons where they feel comfortable enough to do it or they feel uncomfortable. And I want to be respectful and honor that because everybody's in different spots. For people who are going, great, you're doing that. But I'm also, what I've told students and parents coming back is, for those of you who are coming in person, we're putting a very strong amount of trust in you that you're, maintaining, social distance and wearing masks and doing things, according to just what the different guidelines are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that is a lot of trust to put in someone else.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we're gonna steer away from the martial arts and to your photography. From what I see, and also from what you've been saying, I can tell that you really care about other people's mental health, and also like you want to make sure people are happy. You want to see their genuine expression when you take photos of them. Where did that come from? How does martial art and photography connect in that? Because I'm very curious on how people choose their fields,
Yeah.
So I want to know like what makes you choose that.
Part of it is in the title of the business. I call it Creative Flow, and part of that is for two reasons. One is there's a certain level of creativity that you have in being able to do anything, art form wise. There might be a maple leaf outside that I've seen 10,000 times, but somebody takes a photograph of it in a way that's stunning that all of a sudden takes something that's normal and ordinary and makes it look extraordinary. And so there's a certain level of creativity in being able to pull that out of just regular everyday things. And also with the not to go too back into martial arts, but one of the organizations I'm in, Natural Spirit International, is we have in our creed, we say we're warriors of martial arts and scholars of physical movement. Together we seek perfection. And it's one where there's a certain amount of kind of studying and kind of being scholarly about something where you have just this drive to be able to take a deeper look and see past just the surface things. And so that's where, for martial arts, if you're a traditional art, you've got, forms or other things and lots of movements that people might say, oh, that doesn't look functional or practical. Well, depending on the lens you're looking at that through, it can be just what you see on face value, or there can be a lot deeper meaning, or there could be some translation into something that is more palpable for you. And so, there you're taking something that might have a square look in one way, but then you're able to change it and reshape it to something that's your own later. And so that's where that kind of natural part comes out. I say photography can sometimes be a very high stakes endeavor because you don't get those moments back. Those are small fractions of seconds that you're getting timing to get that image just right. And it's not so much the gear or that you're using, but it's the technique and the know-how to know how to compose, how to frame, how to see light in a way in which it's going to take the message or the emotion that you want to convey. Cognition theorist named Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, who's the author of flow theory, the state between high performance, anxiety, and kind of drive in critical moments that allows you to kind of rise to the occasion in a high performing manner. It's one where this could be either a make it or break it moment, or this can be a success or failure moment. You don't get those moments back, or you can try to replay something, but you might not get that exact same look for that moment. But whenever I'm doing like sports or wildlife, I mean, not every sport moment is planned. Not every definitely with wildlife, like you can't plan when that bird or when that bug or when that animal is going to move just a certain way or look a certain way. You've got to have a little bit of forethought and a lot of sort of skill and timing to get just the right stuff going. And so there's this kind of flow and being able to read the situation and move with it in a way that you're going to get the most stunning kind of end result. there's some power in this image, or there's some drama or depth to what I'm seeing here. And that's where I think that kind of comes out.
You choose to do more candid kind of photography for like sports and wildlife, and then for for family portraits, obviously there's a setting and everything.
Yeah. I mean, for sports and wildlife, it's just being in the right spot at the right moment. And a lot of that really comes down to just knowing the sport, or knowing the martial art, and knowing kind of how people move. And so you kind of can predict, where something's going to land, or how someone's going to move in a way where you can frame and compose, and you're trying to document a moment in time. And for families, it's one where you get them going, where they're talking to each other, or playing, or kind of having a snuggling, like kind of candid moment. Cue them in a way where they're going to have a really natural interaction. And this brief moment where you can just really see them enjoying each other, and just having that time together. And that's where you make it happen.
Like when you take photos of family, you prefer natural interactions. You don't want to tell them what to do, tell them how to pose.
Well, there's an interesting thing in posing, and there's kind of theory behind posing of what's different between a portrait and candid. And there's a guy named Robert, I think his name is Villanueva. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, who the actual person is. I think it's Robert Villanueva, but I could be completely wrong on his last name there. I'm trying to remember, but it escapes me at the moment. But he has this thing where he talks about three points of posing that differentiate between it being a portrait and a candid, and also who is it about. So say, look for three things: the eyes, the nose, and the chest. Where are those pointing? If I'm looking directly towards you, and all 3 points are towards the camera, that's more of a portrait. That's more of they're aware of it, and there's interaction with the photographer, there's interaction with the camera, and there's a different level of awareness there. When I turn and all of a sudden take my attention from where the camera is, now all of a sudden it looks like it's capturing more of a moment in time. 2 points going here, but I look at my eyes are going there, but 2 points are there, and all of a sudden I'm aware of the camera, but with where I'm looking at, if my eyes are here, it's in between a candid and a portrait, but I'm still engaging with that. But if there were a second person here, and they're looking at the camera, and I'm looking at them, then all of a sudden it becomes more about them. So how you manage those points, and how you get people to interact with each other. Again, if all their interaction is towards each other, then you're finding a more intimate moment. As where if there's interaction between the two, and I'll do this with couples where I'll say, okay, lean in, kind of square up to each other where you're holding hands, you're close, maybe foreheads are touching, and I want you to hug them like you haven't seen them in 5 years. And all of a sudden I'll tell the one of the people in the photograph, say, okay, now look at them, and then I'll say, okay, now look towards just with your eyes, look towards the camera, or just very gently look towards the camera. And that's almost like you're kind of in there in just a little bit of that moment. Within there, you're getting all these little micro pose variations where you have the full candid moment, but then you have one where maybe they're both looking at you, but they're kind of facing toward each other. So you can see the moment is about them, versus if the attention is taken away or is taken off camera, all of a sudden there might be something more interesting further out that they're looking out, but also that could be maybe more of an editorial pose where it's trying to show poise or confidence or power in the situation, where there might be someone who's maybe staring up and looking off. There's a different type of kind of ideas compared to maybe someone who is kind of hugging onto someone, maybe leaning over with the spine and maybe eyes closed and giving more of a softer look. What's the type of story you're trying to tell with the individuals? And also, if I'm doing work for someone, if it's my work, then I'm trying to think, okay, what type of story am I trying to tell? How am I trying to manipulate and create things to convey a certain thing, which can be really tricky when you're working with kids, because there's sometimes where kids who will just like put on a show for you because they love the idea of someone pointing a camera and spending all that attention towards them. They're like, this is the best day ever. And then there's some kids that are like, who are you? Why are you looking at me? Why are we here? And that's more of that, like, they're maybe not as comfortable. So how can you get them to feel comfortable? You're kind of like the fly on the wall, and you get them to do something fun. And usually, with kids, you have to do a lot of play activities, like say, like, hey, we're in an outdoor spot where there's wildflowers. Like, hey, go show. I want you to go find your 3 favorite flowers and pick them and show them to me. And so you might get them running off to go pick the flowers. You might get them interacting with each one and kind of looking at it and smelling them. And so all of these are different photos and images of them interacting with something else. That can be very candid. And then when they go to show you, that's more portrait-like. And you might get them. You might say, okay, go tell your sister, which one's your favorite. And so you get the two interacting there. like that, where, instead of interacting with the camera, they're interacting with each other, they're interacting with an object. And that automatically, again, if you think about 3 points of focus, it turns those 3 points into a candid moment. Being able to think about how are you framing things? Like, do you have natural frames in how, like, maybe some trees are kind of, they're maybe in between some trees, or are you shooting through the foreground, like through some leaves or through something where, again, it looks like you're peering into something? Or is there a lot of like negative space where there's not anything big going on, or maybe a lot of sky and it's kind of really focused on just that person? You've got lots of possibilities. It just depends on kind of what's your vision, and can you envision something? Because I think one of the trickiest things with photography is you're going from having a vision of something, you have to pre-envision a moment, and then you have to put all of these tools and things together to turn that moment into a reality.
When it comes to like children, you tell them to do this and then they'll warm up to you. So when it comes to sports, do you have to take photo of every moment you think something would happen? Or same goes with wildlife? Or do you just kind of wait up until something might happen?
They're similar and different. They're similar in how both are like fast shutter speed action, where you're trying to freeze, you're trying not to have any motion blur. The sports and wildlife moves so fast, so you're usually using high shutter speeds and usually longer lenses, unless you're doing something really up close. Both can still tell a story. You're still going to convey the emotion of the moment. But I like to say, as where sports is, there's action, and you're trying to parse apart what's the decisive action to really get. Wildlife is a bunch of hurry up and waiting, because wildlife doesn't wait for you, nor does it show up at the same time you're willing to be there. So a lot of it is kind of going out to places that particular animal or wildlife likes to be, and you got to find a place where you can be non-invasive. And it'll naturally kind of give you those moments where they'll allow themselves to be photographed, but you also have to be on it to an extent, because again, they're not going to wait for you. They're going to do their thing, and if you spook them, they run away. Sometimes what I'll do, especially for like deer, is I'll go to the same spot like the same time, like daily, and like kind of let them get comfortable with me so they know I'm not a threat. And then after a while, they'll kind of just let you in their space, because they're like, oh, this is obviously not a predator, and they're not going to do anything. So might even spend some pre-time kind of getting to know them, and them getting to know you, and then they might be more tolerant of being observed, because all of a sudden you're not oh, there's something moving, it's got to be a predator. It's like, oh, it's that one funny looking guy who doesn't do anything and whatnot. Because this, even for some animals, are so skittish where just the sound of a shutter can cause them to run away. When I'm doing tests, I remember one of my favorite photos I've taken was there's one on the Guardian website, was a picture of one of our black belt instructors presenting his son his black belt, and there's a moment where they're hugging, and just the smile on the dad's face because he's proud of his son, making it to that milestone. I'm like, okay, I need to be here on this line to kind of see him and catch this moment, and not just catching the handshake, but they kind of brought in and hugged, and envisioning like, okay, here's the possibility of what can happen, and I just need to at least make sure my framing and my composition is in a spot where I'm not going to miss that moment.
That's a very touching moment. When I was in class and I see people get their stripe or get their belt and their face light up, oh my God.
Jiu-Jitsu promotions, I know, like, those are usually very emotional moments. It takes so long to get promoted. And for other arts, that have the belt systems, they're where when people make it to black belt, I mean, that's a big milestone. Well, I tell students at school, I don't want you to just have a black belt. I want you to be one. I want it to be where if no one knew anything about you and what you did, and there's a certain character level of skill that you're presenting and you're demonstrating. Not about rank. I mean, the rank of the belt, that just holds your uniform together. The internal qualities that you develop, having the mindset of being such, is, to me, the most important thing.
As long as they develop their skills, they also develop their characters.
Yeah, because I think to develop skills, especially if you haven't done jiu-jitsu, I mean, even for somebody who's natural at it, they don't come quickly. I mean, it takes time to learn how to orient and decide and act in ways to perform in environment, especially if it's an environment where the partner or the person not cooperating and resisting, and still being able to perform technique. It takes a certain level of drive and motivation and initiative to continue to hone the skills. And it's not just the ability to do that to get to a point of success, but it's almost also being able to allow yourself to stay learning and to watch yourself grow, and even, no matter what level you're at, kind of throwing the ego out and being willing to make mistakes, and sometimes even being caught. Some days, you get caught where it's like, oh, the person who was a lower rank got me that day on something, but they had an awesome day and maybe I had a missed moment, but I had a lesson learned there. As where they got a lesson of like, oh, like if I can pull this off at this level, then I can catch somebody who may be technically better.
You know that you are still going to learn.
When you're first starting, everything's exciting, everything feels new, everything feels fresh. You're so new that you're willing to try and fail at something in order to learn it.
Yeah.
And compared to, sometimes people get to black belt and they feel like, okay, now I have to be perfect all the time. The ego starts to set in. It's to a point where you're not willing to put yourself out there and allow yourself to make a mistake or allow yourself to fail at trying something new, and you kind of start to get only in your comfort zone. There's a difference in having a growth mindset, humility about it, versus having the, oh, well, I've achieved this, so now I'm going to rest on my laurels, because someone will catch you easy if you don't. Martial artist named Dave Kovar, he's very famous in the martial arts community, especially for developing instructors. Two things he said is the enemy of being great is good enough. So if you say, oh, I'm just good enough, I don't need to learn anymore. But also on the art side, and this is something I noticed with editing and doing photograph stuff, is done is better than perfect. Yeah, done is better than perfect. Sometimes you might be sitting and trying to get something, and it's like, you know what, just giving yourself a rung to say, like, I've made a step forward and let me kind of enjoy the process, because it's not an endpoint or an A and B, it's a process. So like, can I continue to say that I'm on that process, on that journey? Pleasure of studying under Dr. Jason Winkle. He's the CEO of the South Y, but he's also very decorated martial artist and very talented instructor. And he taught the cadets at West Point. There's a quote on the wall of the gymnasium at West Point Academy where it says, set the standard, maintain the standard, and excellence is a moving target. So you want to set a good standard, and for students, we have a high level of standards that we set, and then we want to make sure we're maintaining that standard, so we don't let our standards get lax. And then the thought that excellence is a moving target is we're continually trying to elevate our standards.
So that helps you with editing photography too, I'm assuming, because I know how to do it, but I don't know, like, professional photographer. When do you know?
When is it done? Like, when is it finally finished?
Exactly.
Sometimes if I have one that I'm like way too, like, I'm like super buzzing about, I might have really liked that shot in that moment, or this one looks cool right now, but then later I might be culling my photos and I'm like, I was really jazzed about that, but I maybe didn't quite hit my depth of field the way I wanted to. And though it might not be that particular moment, this other one is technically a bit better. And then within there's different technical things that can be better or worse, or kind of help that process along. So while I do a same day turnaround, but usually I'll wait at least a day or two, kind of cool off from it, enjoy the moment that the shoot went well, and then start working on it, because then we kind of more objectively look at it, and it'll be easier to tell when something's done. Those are tough decisions, but it's one where, again, like I say, you kind of let yourself, sort of like you're letting the adrenaline wear off in the moment. It lets you better, kind of evaluate.
After you've done the editing, let's say, like, okay, this is it for you, do you immediately think that, okay, I want to publish it or post it, or do you take like a day to just kind of see how you feel?
So in my workflow, what I'll do is I'll back up immediately. So I'll back up all my raw files. Mm-hmm. And then usually the next day I'll start going through and culling the photos down to the delivery amount that I say I'm gonna deliver to the person. So, usually I try to shoot for more, just to give variety, but I also want to make sure that everything's quality. Then I'll go do a final look through and just make sure everything's to standard, and then I'll publish from there.
Do you have music when you teach a class, or do you keep it silent?
Taekwondo, we keep it silent because that's probably the most traditional art of what we do, and I think it's just one where for the kids too, I think it helps them focus to not have music in the background. For the Filipino arts, because the Filipino arts are weapons based, and you're doing more. There's a lot more movement and whatnot. There's a different flow to it. And, the Filipino arts are all about flow and being able to really kind of fluidly move. I put on like instrumental, like, rock or techno or lo-fi hip hop stuff or anything like that, and just kind of, get something that'll have people moving and flowing.
Does that work for photography too? Do you listen to music before you take photography or during?
So I do in my car on the way there. Well, I might listen to certain songs or listen to things where it kind of sort of puts my mind into the mindset I want to be for getting going. I feel like I should use music more in my shooting, because I know for individuals, I might offer to put music on. I haven't done that as much because, I just like interacting and talking with people. Probably for more of my individual ones where it's kind of more of a model photo shoot, that probably would be helpful for them, kind of getting into the flow of things. Because you get started, things don't flow from like the get-go, but like after you get a few shots and poses deep, then you kind of get a flow to the session going, and that really you start to see things really evolve from there.
Right. Do you have like a movie that you like based on martial arts? Because you're also a photographer, so maybe you have something with like really great cinematography. Do you have any movies in mind that could represent that?
Two of my favorite directors are Alfred Hitchcock and Akira Kurosawa.
Woohoo! They're great.
Because their cinematography and their vision was just on another plane of existence, back then. Because, especially for me, Kurosawa, just the way that he framed just about everything in his movies. I mean, just it greatly impacted film. And, the two movies I think of with him is, Rashomon, Akiru, and Ron in both the shooting and also the way in which music was used. That's probably, to me, one of the hardest movies of his to watch because of the sheer length of it, but it's also so, to me, just technically and like subjectively good too, that like I'm like I can get through it, but like I've got to sit down and be ready to watch this. Is where the way in which Kurosawa, just the way that he composed his shots and just established things, he used lighting, and the way he just had music was just there. It was never just like beat you over the face with something that was, suspenseful. It was very just like, it was just enough. The way in which Kurosawa put things together was just phenomenal. And then for Hitchcock, I mean, Hitchcock just was inventive. I mean, he was very creative in how he did his, special effects and how he did his things that are normal and totally revamp them. Like I think of like Rear Window was shot to look like it was in one take. Psycho, just the way in which there's just so many ways they establish things. It's not so much just about what they show, but what he doesn't show that makes it so gripping. And
to just look at every small details they have.
Yeah, because Rear Window is one that way, and then I know on Rope, the way they designed that set, to make it still look like one take, they had a kind of a cityscape in the background that they had the light change because you couldn't cut away. They changed the light temperature and they changed the lights as the shots were going, just very ever so steadily. So it went from that daytime look to nighttime. So there's so many small things that they did in that movie. At some point, I'm going to see where this wasn't done in one take. Like at some point, I'm going to see where there was a cut. But I mean, it was just so well edited where it looked like it was all done in one cut.
Do you have like a maybe photographer that you look up to that you kind of got inspired from?
Even though I do a lot of individual family, and sports work, I mean, I really, the ones that blow my mind are the people who are just, can really almost make painterly-like things that do like more editorial kind of shoots and, fashion shoots. So, I mean, you're like Annie Leibovitz kind of, photographers, those really, get me because they're way they're able to use either environment or the way in which they're able to just layer their lighting to get the effect that they do. That to me, that's really inspiring. And, it's one where there's just, the fine art and fashion photography also do that. That's part of doing like individuals and families, and I really enjoy that kind of can be creative because you're taking something normal and natural, but then the ones where you're literally trying to make art out of the photograph to put something together and all your effects or atmosphere haze or whatever you're using, to me that's the technically fascinating part, in some ends.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. And do you have any website or like social media that you want to promote?
If you're interested for the martial arts end, you can follow us. We're on Facebook at Guardian Martial Arts Studio, or our website, guardianmartialarts.org, where you can look up our schedule of classes. Like you said, we offer Taekwondo, Hapkido, NSI, like modern Arnis. Love to have people down. Time of COVID, it's kind of hard to say, oh yeah, everybody come on in. Just, everybody's like, no, stay away, 6 feet. But right now, I just feel blessed that we have our doors open and are able to still provide what we do. And whenever people get there, we'll still be here. We'll still, we're not planning on going anywhere. On the photography end, I'll get a Facebook page, Creative Flow Photography LLC is my Facebook page, and then I also have a link to my website on the Facebook page there too, where it's also Creative Flow Photos, creativeflowphotos@gmail.com. That's my business email for that one. And if you want to reach out for Guardian, it's www.guardianmartialartsstudio@gmail.com. So yeah, just feel free to Facebook message or call or visit the website and make an inquiry. Lots of ways of contacting.
I contacted him through Facebook. He's a very nice guy, everyone. So you can just message him and he's going to reply immediately.
Yep, I'm pretty responsive to Messenger.
Okay, thank you so much, James, for having me interview you. I hope you have a good day.
Yep, thank you. You too.
For upcoming events, opportunities, and more info, give us a call at 812-370-0278 or visit our website at artisanalley.com.